Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming. And this is my first time in Blackhat, so pretty excited, and it's an absolute honor and a privilege to be a part of this prestigious conference. The topic of today is bypassing browser security policies for fun and profit. So what I would be showing you here today is to basically bypass the core security policies that exist in modern browsers, and more specifically Android browsers. However, before getting started, little bit of shameless self-promotion. My name is Rafay Baloch, and I work for the largest ISP in Pakistan, PTCL, Pakistan Telecommunication Limited, as a manager in information security. I'm author of a book on the subject of ethical hacking and penetration testing, known as Ethical Hacking and Penetration Testing Guide. I'm a regular participant of bug bounty programs and have been listed in Hall of Fames of Google, Facebook, PayPal, so on and so forth, for reporting vulnerabilities. My area of research and specialty is cross-site scripting, access as Wi-Fi bypass, and HTML5 related attacks. My previous research has been featured and covered in BBC, Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and other local and international magazines and newspapers. So, agenda for today, we will talk about we'll start with same origin policy, what it is and why it is important for modern browsers. And we will then talk about same origin policy bypasses for Android browsers. And then I would share an interesting test case where the SOP bypass was basically escalated to a remote code execution vulnerability. And then I would talk about cross-scheme data exposure attacks, which is the term that I have personally coined to a subset of a same origin policy bypass attacks. I would then talk about browser cookie theft attacks, CSP bypasses, content security bypasses, and Android patch management issue. It was to be noted that I won't be covering spoofing attacks, Charset Inheritance vulnerabilities, and mixed content vulnerabilities due to time constraint. However, if you are interested into these topics, please refer the white paper, which would be released right after this talk. So why Android browser? What is the reason why I have chosen Android browser as a part of my research? This is due to the fact that more than 82% of all the mobile devices are Android. And this means that more than 82% of all the mobile traffic basically comes from an Android browser. Big parts of users are still running unpatched Android systems. And a vulnerability, and due to the way that how the patch management works for Android, a vulnerability found is not likely to get fixed anytime soon. And again, some devices are not really compatible with newer versions of Android due to hardware limitations and other different limitations. Now, these in front of your screen are not sponsors of my talk. They are my victims of my research, and I have, during my research, I have managed to find vulnerabilities in almost all of them. Testing methodology and references. So the following are the references from where I had taken the test cases, and then I basically modified the test cases. And I have basically developed a test suite for browsers, which would allow browsers to basically test for same origin policy bypasses and different mobile browser-related vulnerabilities. So the test suite has been developed, and it would be up on my blog, rafayhackingarticles.net, right after this talk. So this is how the test suite looks like. It has more than 40-plus different test cases, which you could use to test different browsers. And I can assure you, if you use it against top 100 browsers of iOS or Android, you would find most of them vulnerable to one of these bypasses. So, same origin policy. How many of you here know about same origin policy? Raise your hands. Thank you very much. So, what exactly is a same origin policy? Same origin policy, in order to understand what exactly a same origin policy is, take a look at this screenshot. So, we have evil.com over here. And assuming evil.com has a JavaScript which performs an XML HTTP request, AJAX request to gmail.com to retrieve emails. So we as users, we trust that these tabs won't exchange the data. And this is due to the same origin policy. And same origin policy would not allow evil.com to basically access and retrieve contents from gmail.com due to the fact that the host name is different. So what exactly is a same origin policy in more technical terms? A same origin policy is basically a set of different policies which prevent JavaScript on one origin to be able to access properties and retrieve content on another origin. And what exactly is an origin? Origin is a combination of scheme, that is HTTP, host name, and port number. So if any one of them mismatch, it would result in a SOP exception. However, I would like to mention here that in case same origin policy is an inconsistent policy and it is basically applied differently across different browsers. So in case of Internet Explorer does not take port into consideration. So example.com:8080 and 8081 are basically the same origin in case of Internet Explorer. Severity of a same origin policy bypass. So why is same origin policy so important in modern browsers? This is one of a test case. So in October 2012, Firefox basically released this security note where they said that they have temporarily removed Firefox 16 from the installer page. So I will read it out for you. Firefox 16 has been temporarily removed from the current installer page, and users will automatically be upgraded to the new version as soon as it becomes available. As a precaution, users can downgrade to version 15.0.1. And this was due to the fact that there was a same origin policy bypass that was discovered in Firefox 16. So they asked users to downgrade to Firefox 15, which itself was vulnerable to 14 memory corruption vulnerabilities. So we had 11 critical memory corruption and 3 high-risk memory corruption vulnerabilities. So they had to trade 14 memory corruption vulnerabilities with one same origin policy bypass, because same origin policy, mostly same origin policy bypasses are mostly typical API abuses, and unlike memory corruption, they do not have the attack probability, and they will work every time. In case of memory corruption, it would work sometime and it would not work sometime. So this example clearly demonstrates the importance of a same origin policy. SOP bypasses for Android browsers. So I found multiple same origin policy bypasses in the WebView component, which is basically a mini browser based upon WebKit rendering engine developed in C++ WebKit for basically displaying and rendering pages. So WebView prior to Android 4.4 KitKat were affected with multiple same origin policy bypasses, and for the demonstration purposes, multiple Metasploit modules were developed. This is an example of a same origin policy bypass, CV 2014-6041. What we are doing in this code is basically we are framing, by using iframe tag, we are actually framing rha-infosec.com. And then by using the window.open function, we are trying to execute JavaScript in the context of the framed website. So, however, what we are doing here, we are appending the null byte before the JavaScript scheme. So, due to how browsers are passing null bytes, it is actually, and other control characters, it was basically possible by using null byte to execute JavaScript into the context of rha-infosec.com. So these are examples of different examples of how the POC works. So the address bar is basically pointing to jspin.com. I don't know if you can see it clearly or not. However, the document.domain property basically is pointing to rha-infosec.com. So this means that the JavaScript was executed under the context of the framed website, the website that we framed, clearly leading to a same origin policy bypass. And since it affected the WebView component, and the vulnerable implementation of the WebView was being used by multiple other browsers, as per a research by Trend Micro, 42% of the total web browsers, total browsers in Google Play were affected with this vulnerability. And these are the example: UC browser, CM browser, Maxton browser, where we have basically alerted the inner HTML property. I have a simple demonstration of this issue, so you can see how it works. So this is the Metasploit module, and this is Android stock browser, and we are logged into facebook.com, and I've sent this message SOP bypass to someone. So what we are doing is we are using this Metasploit module, browser_uxs, and what we would do is we would set bypass_xfo xframe options to true. This basically uses window.open function to basically bypass the xframe options protection. And then we would set the target URI to mobile.m.facebook.com. And then basically we would run it. And now we would execute this code in this browser, into a vulnerable browser. And as soon as the JavaScript executes, the Metasploit module would basically retrieve the HTML content. It would basically retrieve the inner HTML property, and it would save it into this text file. And if we would open up this text file in an HTML document, we will see that it has retrieved all the content from m.facebook.com, and here was the message that I sent. This was a second same origin policy bypass that was found in WebView. So what we are doing is, in this code, we are creating an element object tag, and basically object is used for embedding different objects into a web page, such as SWF, PDF, so on and so forth. And then we set the attribute, the data, to Bing.com. And we say object onload this function, and we basically, upon the onload handler, we basically switch the data property, data attribute to JavaScript alert document.domain. And then we basically set the inner HTML property to foobar. So what happens in this case is that this JavaScript basically executes under the context of Bing.com, and hence resulting in a same origin policy bypass. So this is Samsung Galaxy S3. The address bar is pointing to jsbin.com, and the JavaScript basically execute under the context of Bing.com. So the page clearly says Bing.com. A special guest star for today is this Chromodo browser. And in case of Chromodo browser, the same origin policy is very easy to exploit. It is so easy to exploit that even this guy can bypass the same origin policy, due to the fact that it does not use any same origin policy at all. So it was actually found by Tavares Omonde, a researcher at google.com, that Chromodo browser does not use same origin policy at all, and it has disabled same origin policy for obvious reasons. SOP bypass to RCE. So Google has this remote installation feature whereby you can basically remotely install and launch any app present on the Play Store by using the intent scheme. The bug was in play.google.com, that play.google.com basically did enforce xframe options on normal pages. However, it failed to enforce xframe options on error pages. So what we are doing is we are sending series of A, and it would trigger a 413 response error, which then would enable us to frame that website, play.google.com. And then basically by using the JavaScript, we could simulate the clicks. And since the remote installation feature is web-based, we could basically simulate the clicks and install and launch any application that is present on the Google Play Store. However, the only requirement being is that the user must be logged in from a vulnerable browser. Cross-scheme data exposure. This is the term that I have personally coined. This is actually a subset of a same origin policy bypass. So a cross-scheme data exposure vulnerability occurs when a scheme, say HTTP, is basically able to access another scheme, say file scheme. This is actually a kind of same origin policy bypass, but I would like to call it cross-scheme data exposure. So in this case, we are trying to actually frame the etc/password file using the file scheme, and the Chrome console has this message that we are not allowed to load local resource. So some browsers basically allow you to load local resource, but they do not allow you to read the files out of that frame, because that would obviously result in a same origin policy bypass. This was a vulnerability that I found with Android stock browser, and later on I found that multiple other browsers in Google Play Store are basically affected with this vulnerability. So the bug was that if we basically set the href attribute to file/etc/password, and then we basically tap and right-click and open it into a new window, this would basically open up a local file. Now, I checked this behavior with Chrome and Firefox. It was not the same. So I thought maybe there is a way to basically exploit it. So I came up with this attack plan. So user basically visits attacker.com, and attacker.com basically forces a download exploit.html. So in case if SD card is available, we know that it is saved into /SD card/download directory. So once we have forced exploit.html, and then we would somehow compel the victim to open it up into his vulnerable browser, the exploit.html would, since it would be executed under the file scheme, so the file scheme would be able to read other local files that are present on the file scheme. This is how it looks. So we have forced exploit.html, which would basically read the other files and send it back to the attacker. And then we would compel the victim to right-click into it and open it into a new tab. So once it would be open, our exploit would execute. This is a POC for Gingerbread. It seemed that what this code is basically doing, it's loading default.prop into an iframe, and then basically it's trying to read the inner estimate property. It is trying to read what is within the iframe. So in case of Android Gingerbread, it was basically possible for us to read local files. It was possible for a local file to read another local file. However, in case of Android Jellybean, it was not possible for a local file to read another local file. So what we did was we used the universal accesses, or the same origin policy bypass that we found earlier. We used the same null byte in order to access the default.prop file. Browser cookie theft attacks are, this is a particular example which is relevant to cross-scheme data exposure. So what we are doing here is that this is the JavaScript that would basically set the value of x, which is the cookie name, to the JavaScript. And as we know that for Android stock browser, the cookies are saved into the following location. So here's a complete POC. So what we are doing is that we have set the x to this JavaScript, and then this JavaScript would be then saved into this webview chromium.db file, and then we would basically compel the victim to open this file into a new tab simply by using the same exploit, right-click and open into a new window. And since the JavaScript would execute under the context of webview cookies chromium.db file, we would be able to retrieve the cookie value, including HTTP-only cookies, which are normally not accessible by JavaScript. So here's a demonstration. We have this Metasploit module. We have this Metasploit module. It's still available in Metasploit. Android browser _ new tab cookie theft. So all we are doing is running the module, and you paste it here. So to continue, hold here, and then choose open in a new tab. So right-click and open into a new tab. Now the JavaScript, the cookie that we saved, has been executed into the context of this file, and we are reading out the document.body.innerHTML property. We're reading the entire file, and the entire file has been saved into .bin, this file, and this is the SQLite DB file, and we will use SQLite to basically access this and tables, and we would say select all from cookies table, and it would basically display all the cookies. So here's the JavaScript that we injected. So what else? CSP, content security policy, and mobile browsers. So CSP was basically introduced in order to decrease the likelihood of cross-site scripting vulnerability simply by using a whitelist. So this is an example of a very basic CSP implementation. We have the content security policy header, and we whitelist this code.jq.com/whatever. So only this JavaScript would be executed, and rest everything else would not be executed. And this is why CSP has proven to be a good solution. However, there are other problems such as, you have to rewrite the whole page. You are not allowed to use inline JavaScript. For that, you have to use unsafe inline. Now, you might be aware that from implementation perspective, there are 3 different headers to implement CSP. We have this X WebKit CSP. We have this X content security policy, and both of them are deprecated. The current implementation is content-security-policy, which is the current standard, right? And most of the websites basically use this current standard, such as Google, Facebook, so on and so forth. Now, the problem with mobile browsers is, most of the mobile browsers in the Play Store, is that most of the mobile browsers actually do not support this content security policy header. This is an example of this is a website, content-security-policy.com, which basically uses this content-security-policy header, the current implementation, to check if a particular browser supports the CSP or not. So as you can see that Chrome and Firefox have passed this test. CSP header, this one is Chrome, and this for Firefox. They have passed this test, means these are the only browsers, these are the browsers that basically support CSP. However, if you look at any browser apart from Chrome and Firefox, they are basically not supporting CSP because they are not supporting the current CSP header. So this is Dolphin browser, Android Stock browser, Opera Mini browser. You can check any other browser at Google Play Store, and it would not support the content security policy. So this means that the websites that are using CSP, the modern implementation of CSP, would be vulnerable on most of the mobile browsers. Android patch management issues. There are several issues with Android patch management, such as there is actually no financial incentive for manufacturer and carriers in order to develop and push patches, because, of course, security is not selling point for an Android phone. They basically develop a $100 set, and then basically while they are building a new set, so they don't really care about the updates and patches. And due to this, vulnerabilities identified are not fixed in a timely manner. Vendor does not acknowledge patch and doesn't make a new build available because, of course, security is not the priority. And a lot of devices, mostly in Asia, are still shipped with older Android versions. And the last point is very important. Even if the vulnerability is patched, users don't get the timely updates. And what is the reason for it? So let's take a look at the supply chain to understand this. This is from Will's graph. So what happens, how patch management works in case of Apple. So Apple writes the iOS and directly ships it to its customer via over-the-air updates. How Google Nexus patch management works, it is the same. Google writes Android OS, and then basically users can either go to Google website and obtain the factory image, or basically they can wait for over-the-air update. What about everything else? In case of all other devices such as LG, Samsung, so on and so forth, this is the supply chain. So Google writes the Android OS, and then the phone manufacturer, it basically customizes the update to see if it fits or not. And then the customized version of the phone, what the phone manufacturer customizes, is sent to the wireless carrier. The wireless carrier then double customizes the already customized version of by the phone manufacturer. And then it is later on shipped to the customer. Now, keep in mind that the flow may stop at any point. So just because phone manufacturer has developed a patch, and it does not mean that wireless carrier would apply it to its device. So the longer the supply chain is, the longer it would take time to apply patches. Sound bites, takeaways. SOP is one of the most important security boundary for browsers, and it must be treated seriously. There would always exist simogen policy bypasses due to the increasing complexity of DOM and JavaScript, and of course, there are edge cases where we have server-side redirects, and it is actually very difficult for a browser to, in case of nested iframe, you frame a frame and frame, it is very difficult for browser to basically maintain the reference, X reference, and on top of that, we have these server-side redirects. Handset manufacturers, wireless carriers, and Google must do a better job to ensure security for everyone, not just for rich people that could afford Google Nexus. And we have to, for users, stick with browsers from app publisher having long track records of fixing bugs such as Firefox and Chrome. However, in the end, it does not matter because in the long run, we all die. So credits Todd Beardsley, and he's the reason why I'm basically able to present talk. Joe Phoenix, and these guys you should definitely follow. Ben Hayek is here. Is one of the most skilled security researchers I've ever met. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please.